Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Good. We have a job. The continuous job is trying to keep our country out of fighting senseless wars or ducking the responsibility of admitting what we're doing that precipitates wars that we pretend we have nothing to do with.
Yeah.
Well, the war fever is building in the Middle East. It's been building. Maybe it's getting to a boiling point because I think there were certain factions that were very happy to see Lebanon drawn into this, just not Israel and Gaza and the Palestinians. Now it's spreading, and it's not likely to all of a sudden shrink. The headline today in Zero Hedge gives us a pretty strong hint, and that says, Israel unleashes heavy strikes on South Lebanon after war plans approved. Didn't take long. They talked about it, and it's happening. And the peace is not breaking out. I think the war fever is going to expand, and there's so many things going on there. But they may tell us, but we don't have troops in there, but we do have troops in there, special forces and CIA agents, and we don't call them troops. But we're very much involved because they have American dollars in there. So every time somebody goes to the grocery store, they should look at the big picture, which means that the devaluation of the dollar comes from spending money we don't have, and then we borrow and print the money, and all of a sudden, the shrinking value of the dollar makes prices go up. So for them to say, it's the gougers and all that argument, but the wars have an effect on it, and people should not feel good and say, we are certain that this thing is going to go on because the UN even had a vote to stop the war, but they said the UN General Assembly passed a resolution demanding Israel pull out of Palestine area within 12 months. Do you think that's going to help a lot? I think it's going to get worse, unfortunately, and I think we need to convince the American people to look at the bigger picture rather than the narrow day-to-day headline and find out why our foreign policy is a culprit, not the whole cause of all this. There's been a lot of that problem, but our responsibility, our spending of our money, and the financial situation going on has a lot to do with our responsibility. The people, the voters, the Congress approve of our foreign policy, and of course that's what we're dedicated to, is drawing attention to the American people of the deeply flawed foreign policy that is bipartisan, has been going on for decades.
Yeah, well, there's been lots of talk since the Israeli retaliation against Gaza late last year, whether a major war will break out between Israel and Lebanon. Now, there's been a lot of cross-border activity. Hezbollah in Lebanon have been firing missiles as well into northern Israel in solidarity with the Palestinians that are getting killed in Gaza. Let's put on that first clip. Because it looks like this may be the war that everyone has been anticipating for quite a few months. So yesterday, the Israeli War Cabinet green lights offensive war against Hezbollah. They send their elite brigades north, and it says, as many suspected and feared, the deadly two-day Israeli covert operation to blow up Hezbollah pagers, and we'll talk about that in a second, was but preparation for a likely Israeli military ground operation in southern Lebanon. So it appears that the war may be starting. And if you go to the next one, this is what you read, Dr. Paul. As we speak, Israel unleashes heavy strikes on South Lebanon after war plans were approved. So is this the big deal? Are they ready for a full-out war? And you would also say, well, why would they want a full-out war? Now, they killed a lot of civilians in Gaza and they flattened the infrastructure. But I think everyone probably agrees that they have not gotten rid of Hamas. They have not even severely diminished Hamas, which remains that strength. I think even the Israelis would admit this. So you have a lot of unfinished business in Gaza in terms of if you really want to get rid of Hamas. But nevertheless, you start opening a front to the north. The last time Israel the last few times Israel has tried to make war on Lebanon, it's gotten more than a bloody nose. It may well happen again this time. But Dr. Paul, the other issue, and we discussed it before the show, is Israel is in a massive economic crisis as well. And it's not made any easier by the fact that 80,000 residents of northern Israel have had to be evacuated to get away from the missiles being lobbed over. And so that's costing the Israeli government a fortune to house and feed and clothe them in other parts of the country. So they're facing a crisis. They got to get these people back home. And it looks like they decided that war is the way to do it.
You know, with all that you point out, it seems like a little common sense is what they need. And they reject that because common sense should say that the people who are determined to stir up these problems, and very often it's bilateral, both sides do this for various reasons. But I still think the massive number of innocent people on both sides who end up paying the bills and paying it in the form of life and limb. But I think that they do this because they have a belief in the use of force quite different than ours. They think force is very important. If you don't use it, you become a weakling, and that's why people attacked you, not because they are using it aggressively and stirring up the blowback. And of course, the common sense thing, that just blows my mind because it doesn't seem that they have much left. But ultimately, it seems like, why would this stuff persist for so long? Not a year or 2 or 3 decades, but maybe many more years. Hatred in these different regions lasts forever, and it's a hatred that builds up that is just hard to deal with. And I think that unless you address those other features, why do people do this? And that, of course, I think means that people need, some moral adjustment as well as some economic adjustment, and say, well, why don't we use some common sense, and why don't we have a stronger belief in peace and prosperity because it's available to us with the right policy?
Yeah, and here's the Israeli, the chief of the general staff, Lieutenant Halevi. If you put on that next clip, here they are meeting and getting their approval. But I think the question that we would ask, if this is the big thing, if this is the big war, well, obviously it will affect people there, but what will happen with the U.S.? We're just weeks outside of an election. My guess is the last thing that Kamala Harris wants is to have a major war on her hands as she's moving into the election period. Right. So it makes you wonder, how much will the U.S. get involved if they bite off more than they can chew? We haven't reported on this show, but just a few days ago, a Houthi missile, Houthis, not the Lebanese, the Houthis shot what they claimed was a hypersonic missile that landed in the middle of Israel. Iron Dome didn't shoot it down, nothing shot it down. So it shows even the Houthis are considered rather primitive. They have the capability of breaching the airspace of Israel. Now, Hezbollah in Lebanon is said to have many, many, many times more sophisticated missiles than the Houthis have, probably supplied by the Iranians. So the question is, if you're facing this kind of arsenal, why would you open a new front, and how much do they expect the U.S. to get involved? Are they going to get themselves in a bind, and then Bibi's going to call up, well, maybe not Biden, but somebody in D.C. and say, hey, guys, I'm in a bind. I need you to come here. I need you to get involved in this war. And what would that do to the domestic situation?
Yeah, we keep trying to figure out why? Why do they do it when it doesn't make much sense? And of course, some people thrive on power. It's just unadulterated power. They delight in it, and others thrive on, I got to have control, and I have to have more money, and it's wealth. And people make money when they build weapons and all these kind of things. Yeah. And then there's also, the religious arguments that go. But I think that these other factors are much greater than just a difference in religion, because when there was less outside interference in the Middle East, the different religious groups were able to get along together. Yeah. And people don't realize that. Oh no, we need the UN to send out a record. Oh, the UN says it's going to end in 12 months. They've given them 12 months, and Israel has to quit fighting.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not likely to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the precipitating events was this pager attack, which is really unprecedented. We haven't really talked about it on the show, but it's unprecedented. Somewhere between the production of these, the manufacture of these pagers, and not just pagers, by the way, but walkie-talkies and other devices, somewhere between there and the end user, something was inserted apparently into the battery pack. A chemical was inserted that I think has the equivalent of TNT, and along with some birdshot or something to make it more of basically like a handheld IED. It turns, I think Caitlin Johnstone made the comment that it turns people into involuntary suicide terrorists, because you're holding an IED in your hand when it goes off. So thousands and thousands of these went off, and they hurt a lot of Hezbollah fighters, but they hurt a lot of innocent people too. But this has never been done in history, where you would infiltrate the supply chain with booby-trapped electronic items, and I think a lot of people cheered it on as a brilliant move, and it was brilliant in a way that nobody had really thought of it before, but it also changes the world too, because it creates a whole different new era of threat, where you don't know if your phone is going to blow up on you. I didn't know that they could blow up all of our phones at once, and so it's a terrifying thing. We don't know how it happened. The Daily Mail, if you put the next one on now, they came out with an article because Budapest and Hungary were mentioned, because apparently the claim has been that these were not manufactured in Taiwan, but in Hungary said, no, we didn't do any of the manufacturing, it was somewhere else. We don't know, but this is what the Daily Mail came out with, and I think it's terrifying, and the word terrifying is right. Israel did not tamper with Hezbollah pagers. They built them from scratch using shell companies that have been making and shipping the devices to Lebanon for years in preparation for the attack. So if the Mail is right, Dr. Paul, that means that there are various shell companies controlled by the Israeli government throughout Europe, essentially making terrorist devices, making IEDs that can blow up. And they can get out of hand. Only terrorists can. Well, it's not true, because doctors use them and other people use them in Lebanon.
It is said, and they point out, that some of this activity is done on purpose to incentivize these other people to spread the war. They see an advantage to spreading the war for various reasons. But the thing of it is, maybe there's a limit to that. Maybe eventually the incentive is to get people who have tried to stay out of it and argue for peace and want to have peace treaties and all of this. Maybe the number of people who've been too complacent, maybe they just want to avoid the thing. When this gets so bad that you can see some people saying, "Boy, enough is enough. What are they going to figure out next? Will every cell phone in this country be vulnerable?"
Yeah.
So this is just like some of the things that the left was doing to Trump in the campaign. Oh, we'll impeach this guy. All that stuff backfired because it was over the top.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff eventually is going to maybe, hopefully, maybe I'm a dreamer, to incentivize, get people to say, enough is enough, let's do something about this. But then you have the big thing, are we going to do something? Is the only choice to escalate the fighting? And I would say no, de-escalate our interference overseas, and it would go a long way to working in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's a quote from Mark Lynch. This is from the Hedge article, and I think he does a good job of explaining the danger of what this is. And if you put that next one up, it says, another commentator, Mark Lynch, said of the pager operation, Israel's attack on Hezbollah phones, pagers, not phones, anyway, was technically brilliant, sure. It was also absolutely guaranteed that they would explode in densely packed civilian areas, markets, malls, taxis, buses. Just look at the footage from hospitals. In any other context, we'd call that terrorism, and here it is too. So these people were carrying there were people, they were driving their cars with their families in it. They were in buses. They were in marketplaces, and I've seen the video of all these when they went off. So they said, well, this is great. You killed a lot of Hezbollah people. But this is like, yeah, it's great in Gaza. You killed some Hamas people. Yeah, but you killed everyone else too. The war shouldn't work that way.
And I think it's fair to say that indirectly we have some responsibility, because our money is used
Yes.
to promote these type of of activities. So I think that the American people have a responsibility here. I'm sure people would argue with me on that, but when the votes come up in the Congress, if we had a vote today on this, should we condemn that and change our policies because of what's happened? We'd probably get 50 votes to say change it. That is where the real problem is the philosophic support for this type of activity, and we are not as innocent as we would wish that the people would like us to be, because we continue being involved, and it's been just a miserable failure, but it has bankrupted us, and this is what we're facing today.
Well, just like, the virus maybe got loose from the lab and caused COVID, that's one theory. This is the same kind of thing. These pagers aren't going to be contained in Lebanon. They're going to get out elsewhere. They're going to be elsewhere. Who would not have a second thought now going on a plane? Maybe someone has a pager. Maybe they were in Lebanon last week and they got a pager. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it introduces fear and terror for everyone who's paying attention. And in fact, go to the next one. Lebanon has already said that pagers and walkie-talkies on all flights leaving Beirut are banned. You cannot take them on the flight. And that obviously makes sense. You're sitting next to a window, your pager blows up, the window blows up, and everyone gets sucked out of the plane. This is bigger than people realize. Well, to bring it back home, they say, well, only bad guys got killed. Well, that's not true, because look at the next one. I hesitate to do this, but these are real people who died. Well, maybe they picked up Dad's pager. Hey, Dad, your pager's ringing. This young fellow died. And go to the next one. This 8-year-old girl also was killed, and there are more, and there are also very horrific injuries that happen. So it just seems like a new era of warfare, and anyone who's concerned about humanity, I think, should be terrified over this.
Boy, there's no doubt about it. Yeah. And all we can do is do our best to seek out the truth and try to alert people, because the biggest thing is to admit our errors. We say, well, we have a perfect foreign policy, we have perfect economic policy, we have our Constitution, and we defend rights and all this, and that's unrealistic. And us varying all our beliefs and our not following the rules about how we go to war and what we do makes us, culpable on this. That we're part of the problem. But nobody wants to hear that, and I don't want to hear it either, and I don't want to even have to talk about it. But I think ignoring it is wrong. I think if you and you don't even have to pretend that you know every single thing about where it done and who did what, but you have to ask the questions, at least find out. And it looks like so often we do know that our foreign policy is a major participant in our bankruptcy, which is going on and getting worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully it's not a major war, but we'll definitely keep watching it. The second thing we wanted to talk a little bit about is something you noticed on Zero Hedge, I think yesterday, if you put that next one up. Kansas Attorney General sues Pfizer for rigging clinical trials. And this article covered a few things about the COVID situation, but this is the one of them that you had read about.
Right. Now, this was on Zero Hedge, but this goes on and talks about Pfizer and Kansas Attorney General. And it says 26 U.S. governors, over half of the nation's state leaders, have stated publicly that they will not comply with the WHO, who led global attempt at controlling U.S. American health. In their August 29th statement, 26 governors, all Republicans, and the Republican Governors Association accused the WHO of attempting one world control over health policy. No joke.
Yeah.
Were they involved in the pandemic and a few other things?
That's right.
By promoting here it is, pandemic agreement or pandemic treatment. I mean, that's where it is. It's this entangling alliances that's so bad. It starts with that, then all of a sudden they're into health, medication, and military, and everything else. And I'm sure they're very much involved in the deep state and how the financial worldwide works.
Yeah. And the point is made later in the article, but this is a great move. It's a good move. We shouldn't be signing this WHO treaty. They shouldn't be allowed to dictate what our policies are during pandemics. But nevertheless, the Business Insider clip that I had here pointed out that a lot of these governors that are playing tough right now when the pandemic, when the COVID was here, they locked everything down. You remember, even our own governor locked everything down. So what they say and what they do are two different things. It takes a lot of courage in a crisis to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to shut things down. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do what everyone else does. And I think on that measure, probably every governor in the U.S., including all Republicans, failed.
Yeah, we're back to a basic principle. We see it in the campaigns. We saw it during the COVID epidemic, so-called. People, politicians especially, willing to lie.
Yeah.
And it's the big problem, the propaganda, and who's telling the truth. You know, we come in here and I'm bewildered at times. Who did what, when? Who's the biggest liar? Maybe both sides are lying.
Yeah.
You know, but we've lost this ability to trust each other, because if we live like this, the whole system falls apart, and I'm afraid that's what we're seeing. So it's people that right now, and rightfully so, are becoming less confident that they're getting any truth from the government.
Yeah.
You know, and with that, you can't have anything else other than chaos in the streets. Some people, actually, part of their philosophy is, that's what we want.
Yeah.
We need some chaos because we have answers to this, and it's an iron fist, and we will be in control, and we'll bring peace on our terms. And that's where one of the big problems are.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to close out, Dr. Paul, by thanking our audience once again for watching the program, for sticking with us. And please hit thumbs up, like, or whatever you have, and please share the episode with your friends. And please subscribe to our channel on whatever outlet you're watching it. And we hope to see you again soon. Dr. Paul, over to you.
Yes, and I want to just mention one vote they had yesterday, and that had to do for the extension of the budget. And the vote was not horrendously bad, but everybody knew it wasn't going to pass because it was an extension up until next March to keep the government open. It's not a vote that should be voted on. That is not the answer, and it's something that they'll start all over again. And in the bill that did not pass, something was in there that Trump wanted, and that was the provision that says that you can't vote unless you can't get registered unless you're a citizen. Sounds okay to me, but the way it was written, I had a few questions about it, because anybody who wants to vote in a state election has to follow these rules. They have to be they have to be an American citizen. That's a good idea, and I agree. But I think it's the state's responsibility, except for federal election. You know, how can we now have 3 or 4 or 5, I don't know how many new citizens are in this country who aren't American citizens, and they're already voting. People admit it. So for that to be called, well, this is the whole benefit of having democracy. Let the people express themselves. But that was not passed, and I don't know if they ever will. But I would like to see it written a little bit differently, because it's the federal government that says you can't vote for federal elections unless you're an American citizen, and not mess around with telling each and every state what they have to do to qualify people to vote. That would be my opinion on that. Hopefully, we can iron that out where we don't say the more people that come into this country illegally, the more votes there are, and they're up for grabs. Whoever passes out the most money to the ones that got here illegally are the ones who are going to vote a certain way. And that is not going to solve a problem. I want to thank everybody today for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.